So the war with Iran drags on, and it is keeping us painful at the pump. Let's check in now with one of the nation's top oil and gas experts. You know him, Gas Buddies Patrick Dehaan. Patrick, always good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you try to kind of get us where we are right now with gas prices. We haven't spiked to 5, but at least around here, we seem to be bouncing in that low to mid 4 range. Why are we kind of in the Northeast, New York, kind of stuck in that range?
Yeah, a lot of interior states have seen bigger declines because refining issues that happened in late April are now improving. While it's not anything to complain about, Syracuse only down about 6 cents a gallon, whereas a lot of those interior regions, the Rockies, the Great Lakes, the Midwest, are down significantly more than that. And that's because you're still beholden to the global market. The northeastern U.S. still relies on imports of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel from refineries overseas. Those are the refineries and those are the countries that are more exposed to the Strait of Hormuz, which continues to be closed. Also not seeing as big of a decline the West Coast as well. Again, for the same reasons. The West Coast is more reliant on imports of oil, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel to make ends meet. So it's those areas that are more reliant on refining access overseas that aren't seeing as big of a decrease, but still a decrease is still a decrease. Oil
sure.
prices taking a bit of a pause in the last few weeks, as much of the oil market is still hoping that a deal with Iran could be around the corner.
You may have kind of gotten there a little bit in that answer, but we get viewers who ask us all the time why New York doesn't seem to see prices go way down at the rate we see in other states, like say maybe like a Florida or some in the Midwest where you get like big drops. We go down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cents, something like that.
Yeah, the bad side of the Florida equation, there's a lot of states that rocket lower. They fall precipitously very quickly. Those are states that engage in a behavior we call price cycling, where stations aggressively are undercutting each other. But there's only so far you can undercut until you've undercut everything. And in those states, when stations lower prices very quickly, they're often seeing big spikes that happen after those big drops. One great example is Michigan recently saw prices falling 30 cents a gallon in a week. Prices there now have shot up essentially 45 cents a gallon overnight. Those cycles open the door for ultra low prices, but if you're not one that fills up at the right time, you're going to miss out on that and prices are going to go right back up. So it's a little bit different behavior. Some states engage in that price cycling and some states don't. Syracuse is not really a market that engages so much in that very active price pattern called price cycling.
So maybe it's okay if we're kind of steady as she goes, so to speak. Here's one. Back in mid-April, I'm sure I don't obviously have to tell you this, the head of the International Energy Agency declares Europe has about 6 weeks left of jet fuel. Well, it's been a little more than 8 weeks, I think. How are jet fuel levels in Europe? Have they run out? I see planes still coming and going.
Yeah, they certainly are coming and going. Well, turns out airlines have a big benefit in wanting to manage this before it becomes a crisis so that they don't have huge paperweights parked at airports without fuel. So airlines have been mitigating part of this, and the refining industry is very resilient. Where possible, refineries have actually started to work their yields a little bit more so that they're producing less gasoline and more jet fuel. Now, there's only so much of that tinkering a refinery can do, but that's extended the ability. Not only that, the EU has been managing this at a fairly high level as well. Some airlines, including Lufthansa, they've canceled tens of thousands of domestic flights that would be with airplanes that probably aren't nearly as packed. So turns out if you fill more of your seats, you don't need to operate as many flights, which cuts jet fuel consumption. So all of this goes back to the fact that the economy, global economy, when it comes to airlines, when it comes to people driving, turns out when prices go up, people actively make behavioral changes, and that can often delay the onset of some of those apocalyptic, measurements that we've heard. So I'm still not thinking that we're going to see a widespread disruption this summer. Having said that, the longer the strait remains closed, the more potential that we could see some areas of the world with more supply disruptions than others. I don't think the U.S. is really going to see much of that.
Okay, that's great advice. Patrick, always good catching up with you. Really appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.